A quiet revolution is unfolding, largely unnoticed. Men from all backgrounds are making a conscious, deliberate choice to step back from pursuing relationships with women. This isn't driven by loud declarations, public bitterness, or overt hatred. It arises from a profound sense of clarity, a dawning realization that emerges after years, often decades, of effort spent within a system that demanded everything and returned little. For too long, men absorbed the message that they were the fundamental problem. The solution, they were told, lay in trying harder, communicate more openly, embrace vulnerability, provide greater security, tolerate more, sacrifice personal ambitions. They poured themselves into this endeavor, rearranging careers, sidelining dreams, swallowing frustrations, celebrating her successes while their own went unnoticed. They showed up, fixed things, offered stability, and bore burdens silently. Yet, the return on this immense emotional, physical, and financial investment steadily diminished. Respect eroded, loyalty became conditional, genuine appreciation faded into expectation. The birthday forgotten, the support during a crisis unacknowledged, the daily contributions rendered invisible. Then, something shifts. Not a violent snap of anger, but a deep, soul-sickening click of awareness. He looks back at the years of giving, the missed opportunities, the suppressed desires, the constant emotional labor, and sees the stark imbalance. He sees friends discarded after illness or job loss, men stripped bare in divorce courts after lifetimes of provision, relationships where affection vanished once security was achieved. The exhaustion crystallizes into understanding. The problem wasn't that he didn't give enough. The devastating truth is that he was giving all of himself to the wrong system entirely. The cost finally became too high, the rewards too illusory. The awakening is quiet, internal, and irrevocable. From childhood, men are immersed in a cultural narrative that positions women as the ultimate measure of their worth. This isn't accidental, it's a pervasive conditioning delivered through every channel imaginable. Blockbuster films portray the hero's journey culminating not in self-actualization, but in winning the girl, the implication being that his struggles only find meaning through her validation. Chart-topping love songs frame romantic pursuit as life's central purpose, equating male identity with the ability to attract and retain female affection. Advertisements relentlessly tie products to sexual desirability, whispering that buying the right car, cologne, or suit unlocks a woman's approval, and thus, a man's social standing. This constant drumbeat reinforces a singular, suffocating message: your value as a man is intrinsically linked to your success in securing and satisfying a woman. This deeply ingrained belief fuels an exhausting, often self-destructive cycle. Men pour staggering amounts of energy, resources, and emotional labor into chasing an elusive ideal, the perfect partner, the fairy tale romance sold by the culture. They contort themselves, suppress their own needs, and sacrifice ambitions, all driven by the promise that relentless giving will earn them love, respect, and stability. However, the reality of modern connection often clashes violently with this script. Increasingly, men encounter a landscape where dating feels less like mutual exploration and more like a high-stakes transaction governed by leverage, fleeting validation, and the perpetual maintenance of options. Commitment is treated as provisional, loyalty as negotiable, and genuine intimacy is often overshadowed by the performative demands of social media. It's a system seemingly optimized for disposability rather than depth. When a man finally sees this stark disconnect, when he recognizes that the promised rewards of the cultural contract are absent, replaced by a game where the rules shift constantly and the house always wins, a profound clarity emerges. His decision to stop playing isn't born of hatred for women, but from a sober realization: the game itself is fundamentally rigged. Stepping away becomes an act of self-preservation, a refusal to keep investing in a losing proposition dictated by a broken cultural script, the narrative that men disengage due to an inability to handle strong women or some inherent fear of commitment is a profound misdirection, a comforting lie society tells itself to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. The reality driving this exodus is far more concrete and devastatingly simple. Men have meticulously calculated the emotional, financial, and existential return on investment, and the balance sheet reveals bankruptcy. This isn't theoretical bitterness, it's the cumulative weight of witnessing systemic failure play out in countless lives. They've seen their friend, the one who gave 20 years of unwavering loyalty, discarded without hesitation the moment he faced a prolonged illness or career setback, his years of support instantly forgotten. They've watched colleagues gutted in divorce court, men stripped of the homes they paid for, the savings they built, and meaningful access to their own children, all while being systematically painted as the villain in a narrative they never authored. They've observed intimate relationships where genuine love and partnership eroded, replaced by a subtle yet corrosive sense of entitlement, where gratitude for provision and stability vanished the moment she felt secure, replaced by demands for more or comparisons to curated online fantasies. These aren't isolated incidents, they form a recognizable pattern, a recurring story where male sacrifice is met not with reciprocal loyalty, but with disposability. The cost isn't merely financial, though that loss is staggering. It's the erosion of self-respect, the years lost chasing an illusion of partnership, the quiet death of hope that genuine appreciation might ever match the effort given. Men aren't walking away because they lost a single battle, they're retreating because they've finally acknowledged the war itself is structured against them, offering only casualties, not victory. The ledger is clear, the price demanded, constant emotional labor, financial risk, and the surrender of personal peace, yields returns so diminished, so unreliable, that the only rational choice is to stop paying altogether. It's a cold, hard calculation of value, and the value simply isn't there. This revolution echoes in near silence. Unlike social movements demanding attention with protests and manifestos, men's withdrawal unfolds in the quietest corners of everyday life. There are no grand declarations, no fiery social media tirades, no public pronouncements of grievance. The exit is marked by absence, not noise. Men simply stop initiating, stop chasing, stop rearranging their schedules, values, and ambitions on the altar of potential female approval. The frantic texts cease. The anxious planning of elaborate dates evaporates. The constant mental calculus of, will this please her, goes dark. Instead, a profound redirection of energy takes place. The time once spent decoding mixed signals or recovering from emotional volatility is poured into tangible, self-owned pursuits. Early mornings find them in the gym, not crafting perfect messages. Evenings are spent mastering a coding language, building a business plan, or absorbed in a book, not orbiting someone else's social calendar. Weekends are for road trips to mountains they've longed to climb, workshops honing a craft, or simply the deep, uninterrupted peace of solitude. Financial resources previously earmarked for courtship rituals, expensive dinners, gifts, trips, now fund personal growth, investing in stocks, acquiring new skills, traveling solo to places that spark their own curiosity. The relentless pursuit of external validation is replaced by an inward focus on building competence, resilience, and a life that feels intrinsically fulfilling. The profound irony is that this very detachment, this lack of needy desire, often makes them more magnetically attractive. Confidence born of self-sufficiency radiates. Yet, by the time this allure becomes apparent to others, these men have crossed a psychological threshold. They no longer need the romantic validation they once craved. They've discovered a deeper source of worth within themselves and the life they're actively constructing. The chase is over, not because they failed, but because they found something infinitely more valuable, autonomy. The silence isn't emptiness, it's the sound of energy flowing back into the self, a fundamental rewiring of priorities. Women often remain oblivious to this seismic shift until its effects become unavoidable, a consequence of deeply ingrained cultural conditioning. For years, the prevailing narrative assured them that male pursuit was a constant, an immutable law of nature. They were told men would always initiate, always strive to provide, always seek commitment, regardless of shifting dynamics or personal treatment. This fostered an expectation of limitless male attention as a baseline entitlement. The initial stages of the withdrawal, therefore, often feel like relief or even empowerment. The perceived pressure eases, the constant need to manage male expectations seems to vanish. She might interpret his quiet exit as weakness, evidence he couldn't handle her independence or meet her standards. This dismissal, however, masks a growing unease. The turning point arrives subtly but decisively. The stream of attention she once took for granted begins to dry up. The texts checking in slow, then stop. The invitations cease. The effortless flow of validation from potential suitors dwindles, replaced by a noticeable silence. That's when the first flicker of panic ignites. It deepens as the practical void left by masculine presence becomes undeniable. The bills she once never worried about now demand her full attention and strain her budget. Minor household malfunctions, a leaky faucet, a faulty socket, a car warning light, transform into looming crises without his instinctive problem-solving. The emotional landscape shifts most profoundly. The subtle, grounding stability he provided, the quiet assurance that chaos would be managed, evaporates, leaving a persistent, low-grade anxiety in its wake. The cumulative weight of these absences delivers a harsh truth: his presence was a silent infrastructure holding countless aspects of her daily life together. His departure isn't just the loss of a partner, it's the collapse of an unseen support system. This realization often arrives with devastating clarity. His absence speaks louder than his presence ever did. The very stability she assumed was her own creation, or simply her due, reveals itself as something she benefited from but failed to truly value until it was irrevocably gone. The panic stems not from missing him initially, but from confronting the sheer scale of what his presence silently sustained. The exodus isn't driven by aimlessness, but by a fundamental shift towards building unshakable foundations within oneself. Men recognize that traditional gender dynamics, where respect was inherent for the protector/provider role, have eroded. Those same contributions, bearing financial burdens, solving practical problems, offering emotional ballast, are now often dismissed as baseline expectations rather than valued virtues. The harder a man works within this framework, the more invisible his labor becomes. Women rarely grasp the silent scaffolding he provides until it collapses: bills paid without fanfare, crises diffused before they erupt, the pervasive calm his stability creates vanishing overnight. Men confront a stark question: why exhaust myself to be unnoticed? When the answer yields only emptiness, walking away becomes the rational response. Further fueling this retreat is the weaponization of intimacy itself. Too many men have endured the chilling transformation where adoration curdles into transactional coldness. Affection becomes a lever pulled to extract concessions, respect morphs into a bargaining chip, interactions become perpetual tests. She withholds warmth, manufactures conflict, or pulls away strategically, not because the bond is failing, but because she knows it triggers his instinct to chase, appease, and sacrifice more. This relentless emotional manipulation, the push and pull, the conditional rewards, drains a man's spirit to its core. When he finally sees the strings, he doesn't just leave the woman, he abandons the entire corrosive game. Financial independence acts as a powerful catalyst, not by impoverishing men, but by freeing them. Reaching a point where they fully fund their own passions, travel, hobbies, education, investments, reveals a liberating truth: the best life experiences don't require a romantic partner's permission or presence. Chasing love out of societal habit is exposed as a wasteful distraction. Yet, the deepest motivator is the rediscovered peace of solitude. Away from the relentless low-grade tension of managing another's happiness, the unspoken resentments, the background drama, a man can finally breathe. He experiences mental clarity, uninterrupted focus, and the profound quiet of hearing his own thoughts. This tranquility becomes a fiercely guarded treasure. The idea of surrendering it for someone who might destabilize his world on a whim feels not just risky, but fundamentally irrational. He chooses differently, not from misogyny, but because the value of his hard-won inner peace far exceeds the fading allure of the fantasy he was sold. The tremors of men's quiet withdrawal are fundamentally reshaping the dating landscape, creating a palpable vacuum that even mainstream narratives can no longer ignore. Women voice mounting frustration, not solely directed at the stereotyped low-effort men, but increasingly at the high-value men who once seemed eager to commit yet now remain conspicuously absent from the pursuit. The collective lament subtly shifts from blanket condemnations of "all men are trash" to the plaintive cry, where have all the good men gone? The answer, stripped of comforting illusions, is stark: they're still here, but they've ceased participating in a game they recognize as fundamentally rigged against them. These men haven't vanished into obscurity. They are the focused intensity in the pre-dawn gym, the disciplined analysis on the trading floor, the meticulous craftsmanship in the workshop. They're exploring ancient ruins solo, immersing themselves in intensive skill-building courses, channeling capital into ventures that yield tangible returns rather than emotional depletion. Their energy flows into pursuits that pay dividends in self-mastery, financial growth, and genuine experience, investments that appreciate over time, immune to the whims of another's affection. They refuse to compete in a marketplace where their presence is treated as replaceable, their loyalty seen as a given, and their emotional labor dismissed as an expected baseline. When a man grasps that his resources, stability, and fidelity are met not with reciprocal reverence but with transactional expectation, a critical switch flips internally. It's not the heat of bitterness, but the cool clarity of detachment. This detachment is infinitely more potent than anger. Anger can be provoked, manipulated, or weaponized against him, it's a hook others can still grasp. Detachment, however, is final. It's the serene confidence of knowing he can walk away at any moment, without explanation or regret, and sleep soundly through the night. This is the very strength women often unconsciously test for, the unshakable core, yet secretly fear, because it signals an irreversible transformation. Once a man crosses into this space of self-contained certainty, no amount of pleading, shaming, or nostalgic manipulation can lure him back under the same exploitative conditions that drove his departure. He becomes untouchable on their terms, operating by a new, self-determined code. The quiet departure from the romantic marketplace isn't a surrender to loneliness, but a profound rejection of a corrosive illusion, the belief that love requires the mutilation of the self to fit another's demands. Men aren't abandoning the idea of connection, they're refusing to participate in its counterfeit version, the one where loyalty is transactional, affection is weaponized, and their core identity must be bargained away for scraps of conditional approval. They've stopped signing emotional contracts drafted solely for the other party's benefit, recognizing such agreements guarantee only depletion. The frantic chase for the fleeting dopamine hit of female attention loses its allure, replaced by the deep, resonant satisfaction derived from building something tangible and enduring within themselves, a mastered skill, a thriving business, a disciplined body, a fortified mind, an investment portfolio that compounds silently. This shift isn't performative disinterest, it's the natural outcome of redirecting energy towards intrinsic worth. And here lies the ultimate paradox: the moment a man becomes genuinely self-sufficient, deriving his stability and joy entirely from within, the caliber of potential partners he attracts transforms. Not through manipulative games, but because his lived reality radiates undeniable value. He moves through the world anchored in purpose, his time focused, his boundaries firm, his presence carrying the quiet weight of someone who needs no external validation to know his worth. This magnetism is undeniable, even to those who once overlooked him. Yet, by this stage, the allure of temporary companionship pales against the richness of his autonomous existence. The most potent truth emerges only after stepping away. The ultimate reclamation isn't finding someone new, but rediscovering and rebuilding the self. It's waking each day in a life consciously designed, free from the exhausting emotional bartering that once defined relationships. It's the profound peace of knowing you can provide, protect, and inspire yourself without permission or applause. This self-sufficiency becomes an impenetrable fortress. And when those who once took you for granted finally recognize the prize you've become, the door remains closed, not out of lingering resentment, but from hard-earned self-respect. The revolution isn't about rejecting women, it's about men finally choosing themselves, protecting their peace, and realizing that a life lived authentically, free from the draining terms of a broken system, isn't just a victory. It changes the game for everyone, forever. Once you learn to fill your own cup, you become utterly intolerant of those who only ever came to drink.